Welcome to The Life Engineer with Matty J. He unpacks and interviews guests to share the tools, components, and software that's needed to build a life and mindset by design versus one of default.
Bosh, Trish, welcome to the podcast.
Cheers.
Trish, for Make It Real. Is it Make It Real the company?
No, I don't have any fancy company name,
Right.
man. I'm just Trish Lewis, which actually is a weird awkwardness sometimes with all those various things that you have to fill in and profiles and, company name. I'm not alone in this. There'll be lots of us who are our name.
Yeah.
And then what do you put? Then it comes up with something like Trisha Lewis, business owner, real impact, I don't know, whatever. I'm just me.
I'm just Trish. So yeah, mine's the same. Matt Jeffrey. I put .com at the end, so I use that. So it makes it more. So it probably makes it easier for people to differentiate. But so we've got quite a lot of similarities. So we've spoke before on your podcast I came on, which was the first podcast I've been on.
Coming out very soon.
Yes, and I'm looking through your website to try and sort of pick up a few details and just go through some of the things that we talked about. There's so much synergy with my coaching for True Colours and your Make It Real and this authenticity. So do you want to just tell everyone a little bit about your background first, maybe? And then
Well, the trouble is I'm 63, Matt, so how long have you got would be the cliche answer to that, but let's try and keep it really relevant. Oh, by the way, when I say that is actually a cue line, which you didn't pick up on. So I might just have to tune out right now. I'm 63, Matt. So
you don't look 63, really?
Oh,
You're not
no,
63.
Don't go on about that. No, really. Yeah,
Really?
no, it's fine.
My wife, yeah.
Yeah, get it. I thought we'd rehearsed that, but clearly.
Understood. Things have to be a lot simpler for me. That's too much complication.
So I think the relevance is, apart from the relevance of life experience, which of course is huge if you are going to bring that to help and empower and guide and support other people as a coach, it's kind of useful having all those years. And, I've done a lot of stuff and it isn't all just sort of one thing. So I can bring all that and I've done a lot of relationships and all of that is really relevant. But I guess what sort of drove an element of this being me working with people on communication, and I do it that because it's such a vast subject, is my acting and speaker background, as well as my work I did. This is quite random, but I worked it was off the back of my acting. I got commissioned to do some pieces for care homes, and I ended up for Hampshire County Council spending about 10 years freelance doing reminiscence work with people with dementia. And that meant triggering stories, and there was a whole load of communication skills, kind of including what we're going to talk about, which was this instant trust building, because the same as an actor and a speaker, you're walking into different places and a whole different audience, a whole different section of people. They need to trust you if they're going to relax into whatever it is you're doing. And with people with dementia, it really brought it right high up in my awareness. I got very geeky about the brain actually at this stage, and learning about this, all the emotions and that was still there basically. So one of the absolute basic emotion that was still there, or feeling or sense or vibe or whatever it is, was trust. And if they didn't trust you from the outgo, you weren't going to get very far. So I had to walk into a lounge full of people that I didn't know, who could be in all sorts of different states of being, and build that trust instantly in order for the session to be what it should be.
So don't you think there's a lot of skill sets that, and this is where I find my analogies come in, because for me, using the gardening analogy, my first part with the client, which is the biggest part, is being open, because the more open they are, it's like a flower to the sun. Like if it's half open and it aligns to the sun, it doesn't get everything. But if it fully opens, and if you go back to any magical moment in life, you're the most open you were at that time. Like if you really was laughing, you'd be comfortable. Not it really is that point of openness is probably a massively core part. I mean, have you worked with people before and just the process of opening up has got them upset because they've never opened up, you know, so what should we talk about? So how can we help? And suddenly it all pours out because they've been holding everything in. And that place, I think it comes up in anything from dating, you know, taking girls out and getting, you know, that whole dating part of it. Until you can connect with someone, you've got to date. And, you know, it's the same thing with relationships in coaching, isn't it? That building that rapport.
I think the word open is a big one. That's right there at the core. And that, of course, yeah, as you say, so that could be a bit scary. And in a strange way, working with people with dementia, that there were perhaps connections and filters and constraints which weren't there. So actually you could, if you did this well, it was actually quite instant and quick, you know, but equally, if you did it badly, it was the other way, instant and quick. So quite interesting. No, yeah, some of the sort of baggage and constraints and restraints and stuff were missing, which made it absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, and this is where I like with the life engineering and the components. See, my granddad had dementia, and I remember they used to have people who used to come around and do music and that, and sometimes you'd put a song on and he would just cry because it just connected and synergized with something that opened him up. But that component and part of the process of helping people work it's one of those that if you started a session too quick,
which is about, and this is if we're talking about sort of the word rapport and what's involved in that. It's about well, obviously trust is huge, but it's also not going to be the same sort of set of steps for every individual, as you're sort of saying, because if you do too quickly, you'll send them back inside the box. So one of the elements of building rapport is getting in tune with the kind of vibe of this person. And I mean, do you want me to start digging into this?
Just the only thing
I'm using gardening analogies.
You can. Well, let's go to boxing because that point of sparring, the vulnerability, stepping into a ring where someone you're allowing and giving permission for someone to technically open you up in whatever format they think they can. And that's in a physical, okay, me and Trish, we're going to get in the ring and you're going to try and smash the shit out of me. In that space where you give someone permission in the ring, this is where I find the synergies. It's so vulnerable. And it's similar in a coaching session that people have to be open and vulnerable for you to challenge them and question them. And it's a similar thing. I feel the same when I work with someone and the same with the sparring, that I don't really want to go there. and it is a vulnerable place. And that is my last point on that was the vulnerability that's in that place. If you fully open, and this is, we talked before about women and men. Women are more open and comfortable with sharing to a certain extent than men, because it's an uncomfortable place to go to show your feelings, you know, and in that space of openness is where that comes out, isn't it?
And I think all my training and experience as an actor is also they're completely connected, although they might feel like two different things. I was doing the two at once anyway, but I mean, you have to open up and be vulnerable as an actor, otherwise you're going to get very wooden performances. They might be all right, you might get away with it, but you're not going to get what you should be crying at some stage during rehearsals. You should, you know what I mean? And not only that, but you have to do something. You have to be open and believe in what you're doing in order for that audience to be open and go with it. You know, you take them along with it. So
Similar to the boxing, you've got to put yourself out there. Like to get to a point where you're showing rage on stage, you've got to really go and put yourself out there, which again is exposing yourself, because you're doing something you wouldn't normally do if you was in a coffee shop or in a restaurant. You're really going out there and really expressing yourself, and to a point of being vulnerable, because people could go, actually, that's shit.
Yeah, but this is the interesting thing is that you, and this is the odd sort of thing using the actor experience, because people assume that you're learning a script, you're doing it, you're pretending to be someone. There we go. But actually, you do become that person, and you do believe in all of the drivers and reasons and motivations and dynamics of this person, and but you obviously are doing some conscious control, because if you as an actor had a very emotional scene and you tapped into something and you just made yourself cry, and then it became uncontrollable, of course you can't in real life you'd be able to do that. Somebody would either put their arms around you or you'd go for a walk around the block or whatever, but on stage you have got to stick to, there is a script. There is a script, so this builds into rapport building, because actually it's what I call it, you are consciously tweaking all these connecting elements. Because we've already said this person's like that person's like that, so I'm not going to just go in with this kind of set toolkit of rapport building and do the same thing here as I am here. I need to be me, I need to be honest, genuine, authentic, all of those things, but I need to be all of that with a little bit of a control button.
So I talk, and we was doing some work yesterday because I want to market on the Think and Believe, and looking at marketing and going back to boxing. You come from a different place. So if you're playing a character that's really tough, when I always talk about people shifting from where they're coming from, that's the big spanner in getting people to shift. You change where you're coming from. So in acting, darling, if we was coming from a place of, you don't like it, I know, but that's good. I would change where I was coming from. I talk about when I used to put my daughter to bed, you'd come from a different place because it was always a playful, sweet, you'd change where you was coming from. And this point of change in terms of the synergy and where you're coming from, I think for me is a good place in rapport, because you change almost your pitch when you're talking to someone. So where we're working at this private school at the moment, the girls do their practicing their la 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 la. They change in their pitches and they practice it. It's the same like when you go and harmonise with someone, that you change that synergy to allow that rapport to communicate. It's like talking French or English to the right people, where you change the way you talk, don't you?
Yes, that's right. But you don't lose the sort of core, open, authentic, believing, listening, all of those real core aspects of it. As you say, you adjust, you tweak, you move I think the other, you like analogies. I'm keen on the mixer board, because for two reasons. One, it's got the old-fashioned sort of music studio mixer board. So you've got the plugs that you can take in and out. So that's about disconnecting from some of your baggage stuff, okay, or connecting to other things but also you've got the sliders that go up and down when you're mixing. And so that's what we're talking about here, this conscious kind of just tweaking of those levels accordingly. Good analogy.
It is. I was going to
it's mine.
I was going to do a DJ Daisy, and I was going to be like a daisy. I was going to have the turntables on there. I've done a couple of videos, and I was going to get someone to do a mixing thing. And it's like a remix that if you change the record, like you ever pulled up at traffic and listened to someone in a car next to you, and they're listening to something that you think is absolute shit, and they're like, yeah, and you just think, well, how can they get off on that song? and then something comes on the radio for you, and it's just like, oh, and it just that remixing the song and changing where you're coming from is a bit like a waka 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 remix of how you do it. So I don't know where we got to there.
No, I don't know. That's just, for goodness sakes, let's get ourselves together.
Come on.
I'm holding. Look, here's a book. I've actually got the old original copy. I must admit, I'm not. Well, I am old. I've just said, but I didn't buy it when it first came out. I did find this in a charity shop. But Dale Carnegie. There's elements to this that might sound a bit dated now, but actually there's a lot of really solid, good stuff in the work he did. And I have a ebook. I know you'll give me a plug on this at the end, so I won't go on it. But I have used a similar title, so it's How to Build Rapport and Influence People. And I'll just read you his quote on Rapport, just not my mic. I hope that didn't make a huge sound. That's blame Dale, that's what I say. So Dale Carnegie describes rapport as this: a strong rapport usually means that people will be more open, there's that word, to the ideas, suggestions and solutions that we present. So this is a practical thing. This isn't like just, really nice to have rapport.
And that goes back to, when was he? Because he was part of, is it the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? Is it in that they talk about him a lot?
He is talked about a huge amount. I mean, when you are a little bit older like me, you will have come across. It was reprinted in 1955, which was 2 years before I was born. There we go. There were global, mentoring things that you could go on and all sorts. He had loads of books and classes, and it was quite a movement. But he wasn't a con artist. He was actually good. He actually brought a lot of ideas, communication ideas, to the fore in business that hadn't really been spoken to or dealt with that way before. So actually, good on him.
Do you think that that process of openness, I also find that I do it with myself. So I may be in a state one day, and it's like a fixed state, and the softening and opening up. And another link is to yoga, that being open to, so why am I so, if you're not in a good place, to then open up to that, what's the word?
I can't believe you're stuck for words, Matt. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, there's a word recently where there's consciousness and there's not intuitive, or questioning. Well, what's going on? Inquisitive.
Inquisitive inquiry. I actually talk about it as turning detective on yourself. And
I know. I like your new videos and that come out. I love it. but that is that. But then being open with yourself to slow down and then question.
It's crucial. It's absolutely crucial, and we need to do it, regularly. So, like, the more work you do, the quicker you see the little red flags as they pop up.
Yeah.
But they will still pop up.
Yeah.
I defy anyone to work on themselves and get rid of every single occurrence of a red flag. I mean, it's just not going to happen.
It's like fitness.
There'll be days when you're tired, or there's a lot of pressure in the world at the moment, a lot of overwhelm, a lot of fear, a lot of angst. There will be things that play on you. Something goes wrong, and your sort of resistance to those things that normally you're quite good at just naturally working through is way down, and so red flag pops up. But if you do this work and keep opening up, you'll spot it. You'll still spot it, and it might take a little, it might take a couple of hours for you to work your way through it, as you say. But
I think it's like fitness, like a recovery rate. That if you're in bad shape, I've just started running again, and I'm starting to get to a stage now where I'm feeling comfortable, but it's taken me a while. But I remember the same with the working on myself is for now, sometimes it takes seconds, sometimes it takes hours, but generally I'll get back to a good state, like a stance of a boxer, very quickly, and then realise, wow, I got caught with my guard down then. But it's just seeing that quickly and getting back is I think where the work becomes better, because you spend less time being open.
Yeah, and it's also habits, isn't it? The more you practice certain things and ways of doing it, and with communication, is definitely, it's like, yeah, it's like, say, people saying, oh, I don't know how you get up on stage and do, oh, I could never do that. And I just says, well, it's what I've learned how to do. And then I've done it lots, and then I've learned more, and then I've done it more. That's what's happened here.
Yeah. It's like the drills in boxing, like you see boxers and they look like they're so comfortable, but they've done it a million times at 3 o'clock in the morning, or until their arms drop off. So to slip and throw a right, for them it's just so simple, because and this is where that stepping into that uncomfortability, like the growing, is those rings in the tree. It's just not one thing that happened. It's time and time again, the cycles.
Absolutely.
And that, but it's interesting coming back onto that, the authenticness that we talked about before. Again, I think in that openness, and for me with a tree, especially now, fucking cleaning up leaves in a garden all the time.
I can't be on a podcast where you use that word, Matt. I'm sorry. I'm actually going to. That's it.
Because the leaves keep dropping. Because if they don't drop now, they won't sprout in the new year. And that letting go is what comes in all the time. And this authenticness, I could be uncomfortable because I've sworn. I'm going to do another podcast with Think and Believe, and I'm not going to swear. But there's an element of this is how do you get to a stage where you talk comfortably and not feel, well, you shouldn't do that.
I was definitely teasing.
No, fine. But it's not. It's true. I've lost clients because of some of the stuff I've posted on social media. So I've got to consciously, and I've taken stuff down before as a balance.
This is really interesting, because this goes back to what I was talking about. I'm sorry if the word tweak offends anybody, by the way. But I like it. Okay.
Tweak or twerk?
Tweak. It's definitely somebody said they'd misread something in a post of mine recently. Said, oh my God, I thought you said twerk. I thought you said consciously twerking. I thought, yes, let's everybody on LinkedIn just consciously twerk. Hat. Brilliant.
I can see a video coming up.
But it's this, that is actually genuinely, I know I was kind of teasing you, but you're great, because you responded and then tried to actually analyze it a bit, which was really good, because you're right. The language thing is part of the rapport thing. It's part of picking up. If you're doing this quite consciously in a meeting or, something like that, then you are going to very carefully pick up the vibe. You will even hopefully have done a bit, that's number one in my tactics, a bit of preparation. So you can these days stalk people beautifully all over social media. So you get to figure a little bit about their lifestyle and their vibe and the way they use language. There's nothing wrong with that. It's out there publicly. So, you use it. And actually, if you spot somebody who's very open at using swear words, not in a thick, stupid or kind of insulting way, but it's just part of their the melody of their speech, if you like. Then you yourself won't feel wrong about, you might let out the occasional, I don't know, the word I usually come out with is bugger it or something like that, or bum or really rather innocent little cute words, but nevertheless, I wouldn't restrain those, and I might even deliberately put a couple in if I was with somebody who I knew was very naturally open to that. So not contrived, but naturally. And I wouldn't be contrived. It would just be an element of me that I wouldn't sort of hold back, because I knew. But equally, if it was somebody that I'd looked up and I thought, whoa, no, quite corporate, quite, then I would use maybe slightly more precise ways of talking, and number 1, 2, and then we'll do this, and a little bit more held back in certain ways, but not squashing me. That, as you say, is the balance.
It is the risk, yeah, because one of the companies that I work for had a massive potential. I remember there's a guy colleague called Gary Vaynerchuk, and he says he leaves hundreds of thousands of pounds on the table because he's not willing to do stand-up and talks where he doesn't swear. So some colleges won't pay him, or some companies, because he swears. And I think there's a balance and a line between that. This is why I've got the mattjeffrey.com and then the Think and Believe. Because I think there's a space for, and especially for me where I've come from, we've come from different schools, we've come from different places, but the people I communicate with, even at high level in some of the industries I'm in, where they've come from and how they communicate is just different.
Yeah.
It's like going to speaking Spanish somewhere and then someone getting the ump. It's like, well, this is how they talk. And I remember being in a session, it was quite early days actually, and this woman, she was actually older than you, Trish. And I remember saying to her, what would you do if you was being less of a prick about it? And it was and she was like, oh, no one's ever said that. And it opened up, and it was just like a little bit of a quick thing. But I just remember in some aspects, there were conversations and questions that just like crack the shell to open up, and she just come out with all this stuff, and she just sort of realized that she was holding back.
Yeah.
But there are some ways to use them, and I think there's a use of words that are unnecessary. But coming back to authentic, and your true colors, how much of it is I'm saying these words because I remember in the boxing gym, people would come in and they would act hard. Yeah. And actually that's the boxers that were there, the pro boxers that I looked up to, were very sweet because they didn't need to look hard, but people come in thinking they were. And it was funny seeing that transition that, well, not everyone that's a professional boxer talks like that and acts like that. But the stereotype of what I think it should be, I've taken mates that used to work with me on site, and they would start talking differently on site because they were around scaffolders that talk like that. And suddenly you come home, you're like, all right, darling, where have you been?
But, well, that's brilliant. I love that because, and there's this whole fake it till you make it thing with that. We drift off into a slightly different area. But I think that so it's the authentic thing. So actually, I think people won't be put off by you having, say, your slightly posh public school girl, a Surrey voice, if you are being you. Okay, so I can be talking to you with your fabulous London, stuff. And I don't think either one of us thinks, oh, you're not thinking, who does she think she is? She is. I hope you're not thinking that. I hope you're not thinking that, man. And I'm not thinking, oh, blimey, he's a bit common, isn't he? Yes. Neither of us are thinking that because we are both being ourselves. That's the key. It's not literally because this is how I speak.
But I think it's so I use the compass in a lot of stuff, and I think it's so interesting how many things, positive and negative, can distract us from that.
Yeah.
And I think what happens during the day, and part of this grounding, like this centered point for the flower, is staying at a point of presence and a point of truth.
Yeah.
I also use the plumb line for the point of truth. That finding your authentic self, and then saying, well, this is me, and working from that. And you can adjust slightly from that point. Yeah. We're just installing a lift, and the guys were setting out from a point, and everything comes from that point, and that's from the grid lines across the building, the heights of the entrances, even though the floors aren't in yet. All of the doors they're putting in are from a datum that they're all taking and using. And that point of yourself, knowing that I can do a podcast and say shit and fuck and whatever, and come from that
I
point
didn't
of,
say you could say shit.
well,
but
I
you'd rather
say that I can
pushed it
say
now.
it on the podcast, on my podcast. It's not your podcast now; it's mine. But for me to say authentically, well, this is the podcast, and this is how I turn up. I'm going to do another podcast, which is Think and Believe, and I'm consciously not going to swear because that's the one I'd want my daughter to watch and want my mum to watch. So I'll be coming from a different point. But knowing that that's the truth of.
I think number one, I'm disappointed that your mother won't be, or your daughter won't be watching this podcast. That was on my, that's disappointing. But number two, what you're talking about is this. I talk about building, but I talk about scales as well. You know, the kind that the old-fashioned scales that you could see going like that. But the point is that in order to be able to do that balancing stuff, like for instance, your strong, warm qualities, balancing them and tweaking them according to the context and the situation and the people, you have to have the strong base of those scales or the strong foundations of that building in the first place, you know. And so that's the work that you do. And by the way, you know, saying, oh, be yourself is not a flippant throwaway thing, because actually that takes a lot of work, and it
and I don't think
sounds so obvious, but it's not.
But I think there's so much depth in that, saying like the real me. When I started doing my coaching for True Colours thing, it was from a certain level. So it started off how I saw certain people in my life that lived colourful and certain people that didn't, and I wanted to have strong, colourful. How I lived was where it came from, is coaching for True Colours and getting the most colour in my life, which is how I started seeing what I wanted to start evolving through in the work I was doing on myself. But as it goes on in time, it's almost like I catch myself thinking, wow, this goes so much deeper, and it goes so much deeper. And this level of authenticity, it's interesting how far the rabbit hole goes with it, in terms of you finding yourself and almost then going further in that you show up differently in certain ways.
Well, and the thing is that, don't forget also, as you'll know, that we're sometimes what we think is ourselves needs quite a lot of shaking about. I mean, again, the detective thing, I talk about forensics, you know, getting everything out on the table and checking out whether you actually need it, or why the heck is that in there? I didn't want that to be in there. So your defaults that you've grown up with, your labels, your societal norms, you know, the conformity, the oh, she's the clever one, oh, she's the scientific geeky one, or he's whatever, they need questioning, because you might just have been going along quite subconsciously with that pattern and need to sort of say, hang on a minute, I quite fancy being a lorry driver, actually. Whatever, not maybe in these particular times, but
we have
400-mile queue, but yeah.
On the lifts we plug in, and these are parameters, so you plug them in there and they come out with all these default settings, and we tell it it's a 2-stop lift, and we tell it it's a side opening, it's got this, and we put all these parameters in it. So I use this board for my coaching for True Colours, and this film on the top, this is this layer of crap that we've written, whether it's right or wrong, and our job is to come back to the truth of stuff. And I think you're right, even with my swearing, like, where does that come from? My mum never swore. My mum would be, Matthew, why are you, stop it, Trisha's lovely, don't swear in front of Trisha. That's where she comes from. She's so worried about what Trisha would think. But my dad was completely the opposite. So where I've come from. So it is these things that, like you rubbing on people, that it comes off. And I've always said coaching's a bit like a washing machine, that you're trying to get back to, you know, who you've grown up with, who you've been around with. They do affect how you see yourself and how you come out in life. But cleaning up, and a lot of people, I think, once they peel back those layers, realise that whatever's underneath is beautiful. They didn't know it was there. And it's nice as it comes out.
I do. Actually, I've just realised how aligned we are with our love of analogies, because I always talk about rucksacks, and how if you're carrying around a really heavy rucksack and you need to take it off, you need to unpack it, take everything out, okay, and think, hang on a minute, I don't need that. There's no way I need that, because they're much lighter. But also, you've probably got a little thing at the bottom that's been squashed, it's gone a bit moldy, and it's you. And it's your squashed self that has just been held down in this kind of layering of conformity and labels and fears and illusions, and it's lovely when you find it and you give it breathing room to take up a bit more space in this
like weeding the garden, Trish. Like
God,
you can let the real you grow through. So the judgment and barriers, this brings it on to, so this workshop that I do called The Watering Man Can, one of the things is boundaries. When you're cultivating this mindset by design, using the garden analogy, the boundaries, I didn't realise when I was younger, I had a period where I came to a point of suicide. And what my analogy is my garden, my mind garden was vandalised to a point where I didn't know who I was. And this desolate space where I literally even found trouble in speaking because I didn't know who I was. It was almost like this actor and he's lost all his words and you can't act out anymore. And it's like, suddenly it was just a case of bollocks, I've got to make this up myself, because actually all of this stuff was so coming back to these boundaries. And then you come to a point where you've made something lovely and someone comes, what have you got there? What's that? Well, why are you swearing? And what are you doing this for? And why are you doing that? And you're like, well, this is, I want to do my trellis and talk how I want to talk. Oh, look at him with his flowers on the wall. There's a point where having those boundaries, and which is why boxing is quite nice. Like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? If you get to a point where you've got those boundaries, it's like a good boxer. I've not got to worry. When those boundaries can be put in place, then you can live a life by design. Because if someone then tries to come in, and I find it day to day, and I can say very nicely, Trish, no.
Yeah, saying no nicely is something that we should all take some serious practice in, because I think that what you said is absolutely true, and it's such a weird counterintuitive thing to say. When you've got your boundaries, you're freer, but it is absolutely the case. It's so weird. It's like one of the other counterintuitive things that I carried around in my rucksack for years and years and years was that if I became more rational in some of my thinking and behavior strategies, that I would lose my creativity. Okay. I honestly, and this was to do with my upbringing. This was just simple as that. When you look back and you think, yeah, duh. And then when I fortunately really unwrapped that with the help of actually my current husband. Sorry, it took a while. I got there in the end. He's fabulous, and he's a business analyst. He's beautifully sort of geeky about certain things, and so but he's also, I don't know, full of humor and love and all the rest of it. And so he gradually gave me the permission, if you like, very quietly, very subtly, to mix these two things and to realize that I didn't lose the creative, slightly crazy me by bringing into my thought process as a little bit more of a rationality filter, the turning detective on yourself, and it's weird that, like you say, people think, put boundaries around me, I'm going to be constricted. No, you're going to be. Can I read you one of my favorite self-made quotes?
Yes.
Like some people read other people's quotes. I'm just going to read mine. Okay.
One of your bits of work is fantastic. Fine.
Thank you.
Go, darling.
Thank you. Being a reluctant. Sorry, actually, I've changed that. I've just reminding myself. Jesus, proofread. Being a conflicted conformist uses up energy that you could use more productively as an enthusiastic explorer.
Mm.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah,
I love it.
I don't know if this rings true, but the exhaustion of fear in the boxing,
Yes.
that takes up so much energy versus the simplistic truth. I think if I went back in to do another white collar, that I would spend so much time sparring that it became so comfortable that fear was reduced, because it's disabling.
I love that. I love that exhaustion of fear. I mean,
In
that's
such an extreme
perfect.
situation, but then it comes all the way back down, and I see it in people's, just in their body when they're talking. You know, I do this thing in the Waterman Can where I get up and spoiler alert, talk about dancing without music, and we're going to video you live on Facebook, and I get up and start dancing without music, and then it's your turn, and you see these people that, like, just physically, like, you're going to make me dance without music live on Facebook, because you can see them, like, the actual energy it takes to dance is so simple, but they'd rather walk a mile than go live. So what is that? Because the energy in dancing without music versus walking a mile and back is so much more in walking a mile. You'd rather do that. And I think in life there's things that that you don't step into because of those fears and boundaries, or it's so exhausting, you know.
And when you really keep digging down on fear, doing the sort of, you know, the turning detector in yourself and doing the 5 why exercise and all these things, dig till you're asking almost ridiculous questions in, you know, with each one that you answer. And so at the end, you're almost laughing at yourself, because this actually is really daft, isn't it? Now I come to think about it, this fear. But I mean, it's fear of rejection. I mean, we all know that that's your bottom line, really. It's judgment of being, you know, turned out from the tribe into the wilderness. It's fear of having what you think is your absolute identity just stolen and trampled all over, and you've got to protect it. It's fear that you're going to look stupid, or fear. And this was one for me as an actor. When I went into the business world, my biggest fear was, I mean, let me get this straight. Actors are not show-offs. Actors are not egomaniacs who like the sound of their own voice. They're usually frequently quite quiet, you know, people with a fair dollop of introvert in them and all sorts of sort of emotional things going. They're not egomaniac show-offs, or if they are, then that's another kind of acting. But when I went into the business world, I knew that I could be confident delivering talks or whatever, because that was my skill. But my fear was that I would be judged as a show-off or an actor type or any of these things. And I therefore squashed myself back down.
This is where the limitations come. When my brother, who's also a business partner, again, in business, he doesn't want to be what we grew up around, was a businessman that was a dickhead. He didn't want to act a certain way. He sees some of these sort of like after daily, you know, posh people, and almost doesn't step into that role with fear of being perceived like that. And it's funny how that then sometimes has a limitation on what you do. And the truth is that there are some things that you need to step in and do, but making it your own. And this is where I think the insight comes with coaching is seeing it differently, seeing when you're coming from differently. And I've done a lot of work recently with me on this stepping through the truth. So to do white collar boxing again, I've got to drop weight, I've got to get fit, and I've got to spar. And there is no shit I can tell myself that differs from the truth. If those 3 things need to be stuff I need to, and when I talk about surrender and stepping in and letting go of, that is the truth. That I've got to stop drinking vanilla lattes and start drinking lemon tea and water. I've got to stop sitting and whatever and go running, and it's just, there's the simple truths of it. And when you clean up, I do a quote, black and white for a colourful life, that if you go through the black and whites and keep it simple, you then will get the colourful life. You know, if you wash up at the end of the day, you'll wake up in the morning, it'll be done. And the simple truth of it.
Yeah.
But we get caught up in, well, I don't want to go for a run, you know, and we get caught up in that energy and cleaning up. And again, it's linked with that fear and that, and those, you know, the truth is with the compass, the truth is that's the route. And you could go, you know, I don't have to run, I could go cycling, but I've got to burn off more calories than I eat. So I've got two ways of doing it. I eat less or I exercise, but I've also got to open my lungs up if I want to hit the pads or start sparring. So I've got to open my lungs up, and there's ways I can do that. I can run up and down stairs, or I can go out jogging. You know, there's ways. I use this, and I wrote a song about it. It's away. Sounds like namaste. That there are many ways, like making a cake, but you've got the bread and the milk and the basics of stuff. If I want to box, there are many different ways I can get my outcomes, but the truth is, you know, that you've got to find yours. So if we both had to do a marathon or both had to do the same goal, there's loads of ways around of how we get that across, but it's finding your way and the truth of how you come across, you know, your detective thing. There's loads of ways that you can express and communicate, but you found a way that's funny, that's, you know, that's got that creativeness in it that you can act out. And some other person may write pages of information on the same subject. Why do you have to pretend that you're a detective, Trisha?
Yeah, exactly. But I always say to clients, you know, don't think for 1 minute I'm going to try and make you do something like I do. The reason I do that is because that's me. That's me. I have always liked dressing up since the earliest memory. That was my most favorite game forever and ever and ever, and it's never gone. And for the point where I squashed myself, where it went, the only dressing up I was doing was, you know, dressing to impress blokes or whatever. That's not the same thing at all.
Not with the creativity of the
exactly
where you're showing up, and this is where, and it's the same with I think deep down I may be a secret actor as also.
I think so.
With my creativity, I think if we could work on something maybe, so I could express myself more.
You could do a little two-hander there, Matt. I feel it. Yeah. No, I do.
Lower the tone, Trish.
No, it's fine. You could be my brother from another mother or something. You could, some brilliant story unfolds and I meet you and think, oh my gosh, it's my brother. I never knew I had. Yeah.
But I remember when I started unpacking, and I used this compass on purpose, that anything that involved creativity, I had energy for, whether that was developing. I remember building this cabin at the end of the garden and being on a ladder at 11 o'clock at night with lamps so I can see what I'm doing. And Sharon's like, what are you doing? It's 11 o'clock at night. Like trying to pick out where was the energy. And it wasn't in construction, but it was creating the cabin at the end of the garden so I could sit in the office and look down at my garden. It was creating the spaces. It was creating the property development. It's creating the business. It's creating all the systems and the sheets and how I do stuff. It's in the creativity. And that's when you come from where you're coming from and find your purpose, you'll come out.
And I think people see that word creative or that description given to people, or maybe they've had it come up on some of those God forbidden personality profile color matches or whatever, and they, I'm a creative. You're not creative. I think that's really unhelpful, because actually I think people can look at all sorts of things that they get a buzz out of doing, just that little buzz, even if it's creating Excel spreadsheets. I'm deadly serious.
Creativity is at the heart of everything.
Yeah, exactly.
At the heart of everything. I had this welding analogy of, you take your energy and you take creativity, and you take getting shit done with creativity, and when they join, when you take a creative, okay, I'm going to come up with an idea for a website. When you take that creativity and you take action and you join them, you form something. And you did that with your detective, and I do that with my, All in Man Can, and that creativity. My coach got me to look back and list all of the things that I've got, even from the house. I got this house because I did up my last house, and I had the creativity, inspiration to see properties that needed doing up, and the idea of how to do them up. That's where that came from. The businesses we set up, and it all come back down to creativity. Everything was part of a creative thought that formed, and then you start to say, okay, let me spend more time being creative, or look creatively at the situation, and then it all unpacks.
I need to, for possibly it might seem like an unconnected reason, recommend a Netflix film.
Go on then.
I just need to, because I'm paid by Netflix for every podcast.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I need to, because I watched it last night and it's fresh in my mind, and it's called My Octopus Teacher.
Right.
And this guy, I'm not doing any spoiler. It's a proper documentary. It's not a cartoon or anything like that. It's a documentary. And if you like underwater stuff, it's just amazing. But it's got an octopus in it, and but he was at a very, very low point, overwhelmed, probably packing it all in life state. And he knew he had to do something, or he was just going to sink over into this place. And he took this action that he then repeated day after day after day. And it is involved with diving into the ocean, and it then involves this octopus, which he didn't know necessarily was going to evolve like it did, but something very kind of opening. He opened up basically in this process. So I just want to put it out there as one of those things that I think everyone should watch.
But I think that is and that's linked in with the boundaries of giving yourself permission to do that, because it's someone can shut you down straight away. There's so many synergies with all of it. Barrier breaking, and consciously, we noted last on your comments about breaking that down, and that, so someone that's watching this from a component point of view that they can do. So I journal. Mm-hmm. So in the mornings I sit and maybe think of an area that I'd like to unpack in, and then just unpack. I just sit and wait. I always talked like questions for coaching is like throwing a stone into someone's well, and the deeper that it can go, and the deeper they've got to go and to unpack it and answer it, that they're coming from within. So you ask a question, so like, what do you want to use coaching for? And you throw that in, and they come and they unpack that. This barrier breaking, this allowing yourself to step into and unpack and open up. And
I think something you could do. So, I mean, everybody has their own ways of getting themselves into the place that they're best able to do this opening up and analysing kind of thing from. And I mean, it might be, I tend to do this best when I'm walking, basically. Yes. So journaling, walking, sitting under a particular tree that gives you a good, and please, that's not a fluffy thing to say. Trees are very special. Okay, they really, really are. You don't have to be wearing a certain outfit or have your hair in a certain style to hug a tree. Okay, they're special. So wherever it is, whatever space it is, I mean, it might even be in a cafe, in a corner of a cafe that you feel a certain vibe going on around you. Of course, we're speaking in global pandemic. So forget the cafe thing, right? So,
maybe,
but wherever it is, and listen to the voice that is doing this thing, the fear sort of demon having a party here, and instead of getting sucked into it and playing the game with it, you need to just sort of say, hang on, and could you just go and stand over there, please, in the waiting room? I've got a little bit of work to do here. And just, even if you just take that one sentence that keeps, or that one trigger or that one thing that you keep stopping yourself from doing, and then just do this turning detective on yourself. You just literally, right, this is the thing. So you become now the detective rather than you inside your own head. So this getting out of your own head is like crucial to all of this. So, right, okay, question number one. So top two questions. What is it you're afraid of if you were more yourself, or something like that? Okay. Yeah. Question number, so you answer that. Question number two, based on that answer, do you have any supporting evidence for this? Okay. And then that really makes you think, because part of you would say, yeah, well, that always happens. And this is what, and then when you actually have to write down.
Question it to get to the truth.
Yeah. I mean, for instance, so I'm afraid of people thinking that I'm a show off. Okay. I'm afraid of people thinking that I'm unprofessional. Right. Okay. Question number two, I would answer maybe something like this: because my mother never liked it when I was the center of attention, or because professional people wear proper dresses and matching shoes. And you'd sort of hear yourself saying this or writing the same thing. This is ridiculous. Yeah. This is ridiculous. Cross it out. That's not going to stand up in court. And, you know, and it sort of just takes this kind of mystery and fog away from that initial.
Yeah, and I think it's a similar thing of being in court and being questioned, like you're getting in the ring and sparring, that what you're doing is you're getting to the truth of everything. And if the truth is that, you know, I want to run a marathon and I'm 90, the truth may be that I'm too old, but you could still walk a mile or half a mile or a meter.
Captain Tom, yeah.
There was two things I wanted to say. One is that there was this story about when you settle, it's like the band quieting. The flute is always playing in the background, but until the band quietens down, you can't let the flute come through. And I remember my coach, there's some points, you know, when you think that this coaching shit is all a bit woo-woo, my coach got me to sort of center and shut my eyes and then basically stop thinking from here and get this breathing exercise to start thinking for feeling from here. And it's interesting when you ask yourself a question and ask yourself, don't answer it from here, this calculator of computer that's just going to come up with whatever information it's got from past to make a decision. Answer it from here. So what do you love doing? Don't think, oh, I love doing, I'll say this because it sounds good. Like, what do you love doing? And listen to the flute playing in the band. And that point of trying to do, which is what I try and do in when I say journaling, is to try and write from here on the things that are coming up, even if they sound mental, that just let it come out from there. Yeah. And then you start to sort of think, well, that for me is the compass and the line of where I'm working from. And then maybe think of 2 or 3 things I can do to make it happen.
Yeah.
And that's where that coming out of yourself comes from, because the risk is with this, you know, acting lark, is you just do things that you think sound good or think should be done, or you know, and then you're not authentic, and it's
such a shame. It's a waste. It's a waste. And some people never ever unpack and open. And you know, one of the things I do on the side is I'm a funeral celebrant. So that means that I deliver funerals, but the first bit is going and visiting the family. And rather like I did with the reminiscence work, it's very similar. They've got to build instant rapport with me. It's got to be pretty instant, that trust. I'm walking into a stranger's house who is in the raw stages of grief, and I'm asking them to share the story of their loved one with me. That's quite a thing. So I've got to be me. I've got to be relaxed. I've got to obviously also be aware of the place I'm in and the people I'm with. And that,
you don't do your twerking there, do you?
Vibe, a lot of twerking going on there.
No, tell me you don't twerk there.
But the point is that they, you know, will tell me stories sometimes it's so sad, because you just get this sense that this person they're talking about never ever did, because people did they? Back in the day, this was very rare for people to look at themselves and develop and, you know, be open. So there's a lot of people lived lives, and my parents would be two of them, you know, that actually did keep quite a lot squashed.
Yeah,
and you can tell by the story that I'm now hearing. You think,
and I think what the last thing that we've got on here consciously, I almost wanted to set a group up the other day and invite people that I would say, someone talked, I think it might have been Joe Rogan, talked about this pandemic. It's going to make some people go more unconscious, like plugging into the matrix, like, you know, the social media stuff. They're going to make some people more unconscious because they're plugged into, well, what's going on? But it will release some people that are more conscious and that are more aware. And I definitely think at the moment with the social media and all that sort of stuff, that I'm finding that I can become unconscious and plugged into or conscious. And this, I'm reading it for the third time now, The Power of Now. And this consciousness of presence, and finding people that are open to it, because I think there has been, and if I went back and watched the film The Matrix, there's been there's generations of people that are plugged in to this society and what you should do and how you should turn up. And I watched the other day Social Dilemma of how the kids are plugged in, and I made my daughter watch it, and it's interesting how these computers are getting us to stay connected, stay on the phones, and how much time we spend on it, and getting sucked in and drawn in like a magnet, and not aware and consciousness of what we're doing, how we're thinking, you know, that consciousness of presence of mind. And I think you've got generations of people that have just acted out through their whole life.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's quite a thing. Oh my gosh, is it
It's wrapping up time? Hour and 2 minutes. That's good timing. It's always good. We're gonna have to book another one in, Trish. I think we can just keep going.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we could do one of those kind of podcast marathons.
If I do the Think and Believe podcast and start it up, I'll get you to come on that, and I promise I won't say anything bad.
And your mother would listen to that as well, which would be nice.
She doesn't. I don't know if she does. She might do. My daughter definitely won't listen to it. Talking about my coaching crap. Don't coach me, Dad. Don't coach me. Just be a normal dad.
Normal.
Is my analogies. Talk about the truth, shall we, Dad? She's got me sussed.
Oh God, how embarrassing!
What you have to do, though, I think it's after time. You hear them coming out with stuff. You just have to leave snippets of it so that they pick up on it, and they don't think that Dad told them. Listen, Trish, thanks for coming on. It's been good.
Can I tell people where to connect with me, Matt?
Tell me people where to connect.
Well, you know, LinkedIn, basically. I'm definitely a LinkedIn. That's where all the action is. Okay, right. So if you start off there, obviously TrishaLewis.com. The Trisha is spelt with an S and an H. Very trendy. Did that years ago, bit silly, but there we go. TrishaLewis.com. And I also have on the top section, I think it's called the Heroes section of my website, I have a button you can click to get a free download of a sort of 45-page ebook on building rapport.
Nice.
So that's...
You've got the podcast on there as well.
Oh, and I've got my podcast, which you are going to be zapping up on in the next couple of weeks, called Make It Real. There we go. Didn't
swear on that one, did I? That's good, wasn't it?
I don't know. I've got to re-listen to it. I've got to re-listen to it. Oh no, it was a really good chat. I won't be bored. I never get bored re-listening to my podcast before I edit them and all the rest of it. And I think some podcast hosts actually don't bother at all. But because I want to put little quotes and little things in the show notes, I always do re-listen, and also I pick out a clip. So all that process means that I consciously listen again to the conversation that I had with my podcast host. And And actually, I think ultimately I might not be, you know, a sort of world global viral gone podcast
No,
yet, but
I think
the
about
response is good. Yeah.
taking some of my snippets down and taking some sections where maybe we've talked about certain things and just putting them out, because sometimes an hour is too long for people to go through it. But I like doing a podcast because I like having these authentic conversations.
Yeah.
It helps me to unpack more about and describe and talk about what I do and what I say and what I do. And for me, with the life engineer, it's finding there's some components here people can take and put into their life and some awareness that make the changes. And I think these conversations are where you unpack it. And
well, as long as I've been of some use to you, Matt, that's made my entire morning.
And I also think I want to call it something other than double hander, but I also think our creative drama thing would be something you can get in touch and let me know when to audition.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Writing. Yeah, let me know if you ever need any creative writing that can come and just make shit up.
Yeah.
I'll come up and write you a play. I don't know if I want to act so much, but I'll come up and make it. I almost want a job for Disney. You know, where they sit there in a room and talk about characters and start coming up with different characters. I think that would be good. I'll be good.
Wouldn't that be fun? Yeah, absolutely. I think, to be honest, if you don't look, I think it's quite therapeutic to look at what's going on in the world at the moment globally, almost like it's a piece of theatre. Again, it's a way of not getting sucked into doom, gloom and utter despair, because it can actually provide some laughter in its awfulness. I know that sounds really callous, and I don't care about people who are suffering, but we will do ourselves a lot of damage if we're not careful.
I think you have to. Yeah. I listened to a comic the other day that was saying that President Trump's, it's so difficult because how can you make something more comical from it? I think there's some situations that you have to, and this is releasing. Yeah, you have to let go of the seriousness of it because it's so intense.
You do, and get up and dance around the sitting room, for God's sake. Seriously, if we, this is one of the problems at the moment, without getting too political, but this idea of, you know, I was meant to be doing a piece at a theatre this month actually, but theatre's closed. But you know, this idea of no live music, no theatre, no dancing, no singing, whatever is utterly hideous. It's like a world without trees. So, you know, at least make your own music.
I think a friend of mine's just lost his dad and his mum's at the last stages of dementia, and he's got so much going on. And I said to him, like, part of my role is for you to phone me up and just talk utter shit.
Yes.
And almost make light of the situation. Like we was talking the other day, and some of the stuff he wouldn't talk and say openly about the situation and everything going on. But sometimes that's the only way you can cope and flip it and see things differently, because otherwise that bag is so full and heavy, isn't it?
I know. Yeah.
And that's where I think the acting and the humour comes in. I think we just got to keep it up and do more of it.
Keep it up. Is that the last line of your keep it up?
Keep it up. Got to go now. Right. Thanks a lot, Trish. I'll see you later. Take care.
You too.